vessel. So just kind of a wrap-up of the difference between xylem, which carries water, and phloem, which carries sugar inside the tree. All right. Now we're going to focus more on water transport. We'll save the mechanics of sugar transport for later. Water is amazingly efficient in going through trees. It's amazing how fast it goes. In fact, you can see over here, I've got a little fact for you. It says a large oak tree can transpire or move up to 110 gallons of water in a day through the system. So up through the roots and out through the leaves, 110 gallons a day. So that would be on a nice hot dry day, lots of water moving through the plant. Pretty amazing when you think about it. Now, how does it do that? Well, there are two factors that kind of work together to make this happen. First of all, there's what we call a push from the roots. Okay, if the roots have a lot of water in them, then they are under a lot of pressure, kind of like a water balloon filling up, and so there's a push to move that water up against gravity. But we also have a pull. The pull is transpiration plus cohesion plus adhesion. I need to talk about what those three things are real quick. So the first one, transpiration. So let's just put it down here. I'll put it as T. Transpiration is water evaporating from the leaves. Okay, so the leaves have little holes in them that water can evaporate from. As it warms up or heats up, turns into a gas, and it leaves the leaves. So that's transpiration. Next one, cohesion. Put a C for that. Cohesion means that the water molecules stick together. H2O water sticks together. So once one water molecule starts to transpire off the leaf, starts to evaporate off the leaf, you can think of it as being stuck to a bunch of other water molecules that's going to pull with it out into the atmosphere. Okay, so water molecules will stick together, and so when one starts to evaporate, the rest of them that it's stuck to will also begin to evaporate. The last one, our adhesion, is important so that the water doesn't fall back down with gravity down those xylem vessels that we just talked about. So adhesion is the fact that water sticks to other things. Now, you've all seen this, like on your windshield, for example, when it rains and the water droplets stick to the glass. So when the water is sitting in that xylem tube, we just went over this drawing, but remember, here's our xylem, like a straw. Instead of falling down to gravity, instead, because of gravity falling down, it's going to stick to the walls of the xylem. That's adhesion. Okay, so we've got all these water molecules stuck to the walls of the xylem. And remember, they also stick to each other, so they kind of form these chains of water molecules across the xylem that makes sure that they stay put and don't slide backwards back to the roots against or with gravity. And remember, as I said, as one water molecule starts to evaporate, so here's our evaporation happening off the leaves, it pulls all the rest of the water molecules with it like a chain. And that's because, again, of cohesion, the water molecules sticking together. So we want to think about the fact that we've got push and pull working together, and what kinds of things would actually increase the transport of water, increase transpiration. So I already kind of mentioned a couple things, that we're going to see more transpiration on a dry day, right? More evaporation, more transpiration on a hot day. Because transpiration is occurring in the leaves, the bigger the surface area of the leaf is, the more transpiration we're going to have. So the size of the leaf. Oops. Whether or not there's any shade. Okay, there's all sorts of different factors that can affect how much water is being pulled through a plant on a given day. Eventually you're going to do a lab, an investigation, to look at what these different factors are. Alright, now just a little bit more close look at transpiration and how this actually happens, how the water gets out of the leaves. We're going to look at special structures in the leaves that are called stomata. And I'll get down to the diagram in just a minute, but I want to explain what they are first. So stomata are these small openings in the leaves that are actually intended, or their purpose is to actually allow air exchange. Hopefully you know or remember that plants, because of photosynthesis, need to bring CO2 into the cell to use in photosynthesis, and as a byproduct or waste product, they need to let oxygen out. Okay, so there's these holes, these stomata in the leaves that allow those gases to move back and forth because the photosynthesis that is using and producing these gases is happening in those leaves. But as kind of a side effect of these openings, you're also going to have some water escape, and that's again transpiration. Most of the stomata are located in the lower epidermis, in other words, the underside of the leaf. Okay, not the side of the leaf that gets hit by the sun all the time, but the side of the leaf that's more shaded. Each stoma, or hole, these openings, is surrounded by two special cells called guard cells. And that's where we're getting down into this diagram now. So the actual hole or opening, the stoma, is right here in the middle. Okay, and it's labeled here as a pore or a hole. And then the guard cells are on either side. Okay, they kind of wrap around that opening. And that's labeled here as a guard cell. They are normal cells. They have a nucleus, all the regular structures. They also have chloroplasts in them, so they appear green. And they are going to control how big that opening gets. Because sometimes you need to allow a lot of gas exchange for photosynthesis. Sometimes you don't. Alright, so we're going to focus in on these guard cells a little bit. Just listen to this description of what happens, and we'll go through this animation down at the bottom, and then think about what you might want to write for yourself to help explain this, a diagram or a description. But what happens is, if you get a lot of water pressure in the guard cells, so in other words, the plant has lots of water in it, then the cells are pulled apart and the stomata are open. Because at this point, if you have a lot of water as a plant, it's okay if you lose a little bit through transpiration. This is a good time to exchange that oxygen and carbon dioxide. Alright, so lots of water means the guard cells pull apart, open up those holes in the leaves. However, when water pressure in the guard cells is low, in other words, when there's not a lot of water in the plant, the cells, those guard cells again, will move close together, kind of shut the gate, and the stomata are closed. Right, think about it. If there's not a lot of water around, you don't want to have those holes open and lose more water through transpiration. So they'll close up the holes, the gas exchange won't happen, and they'll just wait until the plant has enough water to open up again. So again, I want to show you this little animation. So you can see this kind of in action. Again, this is not an actual guard cell to begin with, but it'll show you the kind of idea of what's happening here. And let's see. Well, maybe it's not going to link to that for me. I can show you it with a drawing though, just as easily. Alright, so we're going to do these guard cells in green. Let's do the first one. When water pressure in the guard cells is high, the cells are pulled apart. So here's our guard cells. They're pulled apart, and the stomata are open. So there's a nice big hole in the middle, okay, for lots of gases to go in and out of the cell. And remember, water is also lost at this point through transpiration. Okay, when the water pressure in the guard cells is low, so they're kind of like deflated balloons here, they close. So here's our deflated guard cells. And there's no opening, right? The stomata are closed. And so the gases can't move in and out. The water can't move in and out. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so the last thing to talk about with the stomata is on a hot, dry day, what's going on? And I think we've kind of touched on this already, but I want to make sure you understand this, that these guard cells are really responsible for making sure that we've got this gas exchange happening. Okay, what's the main purpose of the stomata is to allow the plant to exchange the carbon dioxide and the oxygen for photosynthesis. At the same time, though, the plant needs to worry about potential loss of water. So if it's a hot, dry day, it's better for the stomata to stay closed and conserve water than it is to stay open to exchange for those gases. So a plant isn't always going through photosynthesis 100% of the time. In fact, a great time for them to open up the stomata to reduce water loss is at nighttime. So there are whole species of trees and plants that will only do gas exchange during the night. Even though there's no sunlight at the nighttime, they can go through parts of photosynthesis during the day and then exchange the gases at night when they're not going to lose as much water. As you can imagine, there are a lot of desert plants that do this. So the guard cells have kind of a tricky job in that they have to regulate that exchange of gases as well as the water loss through transpiration.